everybody doing? We're excited today. We have an incredible show for you. Thank you for watching Wednesday Night Live. This is an exciting day. We have a special guest that we're going to call out in a couple of seconds. This man has done so much for our area. We are beyond honored to know him. He's a personal favorite of mine. We'll get into all of that in a minute. But I'd like to introduce you guys to former Mayor Mike Lombardo. Good. I'm very excited about you being here with us. Thank you. It's so exciting to have you here with us. You've done a lot in Pittston. You've been a busy guy here.
Thanks. Well, it's a great place. We're certainly very fortunate to have great people, and certainly you and your congregation are a great new addition over the last couple of years to that. So it's always exciting to see things move forward. I've been very fortunate. I have a great team that I get to work with for the past 20 years. So I'm really excited. I think there's some great things that are ahead of us.
We have noticed when I came here, the Main Street area was almost dead. And over the last 8 years, wow, what an amazing change. I mean, it came alive in less than a couple of years. I know you talk about your team, but how do you accredit that? What made that? What caused that change like that?
Well, I think that the last 8 years have really been the visible part of some of the change, but really it's been 20 or 25 years in the making, to be honest with you, Reverend. It's like building a house. The foundation goes in and nobody really sees the hole being dug and the blocks being in, but really that's the most critical part. So that foundation work was really tough work, and it took 15 or so years to really get that organized, to come up with a plan, really to come up with the blueprint for where we were headed. And over the last 8 years, then you've seen that. And I think to answer your question specifically, what do I attribute that to? It's really having a plan, both with long-range goals and short-term goals, and then some intermediary goals that we can reach. And I think when you do that, you're able then to give your constituents at least a sample of some really quick and easy successes. And then they're more willing to stay in the process with you, I think, for the long haul. So, I think that's observant of you to say that, those changes have occurred in the last 8 years, but, there's still lots more to do.
Oh, I'm sure. But the thing that we've noticed is, again, first of all, with the Main Street area, there weren't that many stores. And when I did see a store or a business come and surface itself, it couldn't survive, or it didn't survive for whatever reasons. Now we see the support that the whole city has come together. Somebody opens a store on Main Street or in Pittston, period, and there's a support this person. The community. Amazing how the community has really come together, and I know that it's a lot of planning. I can't imagine how much work must be involved. And to say nothing short of the administrations that exist presently with Mayor Clutch, but you've kind of been a little bit hands-on in the background of a lot of different things. And what feeds your passion for this area?
Well, I've spent the vast majority of my life, over 40 years here in the city. My parents are from this area, and I've always felt that the people, they're the key ingredient, and that's what's always really, motivated me for change. And I've always felt as though, we're really lucky here. We've got great people that really care about their city, and actually the Northeast in general. What I'm saying can really cross the lines of the city, and I would hope that eventually we start to see some of those changes, and that's something that's really important to me. Hopefully, if I get this third term, to start looking at some more regional and bigger picture things, because that's really important. But the idea of having a place and raising your family, and somebody once asked me, at the end of my second term, which happens to be 12 years ago. So, the irony is I'm out of office longer than I was in office, at least at this point. I'm hoping to balance the scales a little bit come January. But somebody once asked me what I was most proud of, and I think they were waiting for me to talk about bricks and sticks projects. But really, what I'm most proud of, and you hit it right on the head when you talked about the support of downtown. I think there's a revived pride. It's not a newfound pride,
Right.
Because I think the pride was always here, but I think as the economy of the Northeast changed, when the coal industry evacuated, and then its partner industry, the garment industry, left, there was a sense of I think frustration, and there was a sense of resetting of expectations. And
Right.
I think we've talked about it before. If you set your expectations to zero, then every day you wake up, you're never disappointed.
Right.
It's when you push out of your comfort zone and you move to the edge and expect something a little bit more, you start to take an emotional risk, and that's not easy. So it's hard to build that confidence. And I always thought that right along, while I didn't know much about politics when I started, my background is psychology.
Psychology.
And I always thought that, just like people, a city can have sort of this thing like self-esteem, and it's, what is the overt piece that sends that message? That's why it's so important to pay attention to little details downtown. It's sort of, if I walked in here and my shirt was hanging out of my pants and I looked disheveled, you'd think I wasn't prepared. Now, I could be completely prepared, but your first impression would be such that I'm probably not prepared. So, we've worked on those things, and we've tried to apply those theories to downtown and those theories to the neighborhoods, because that's our next real big battle.
Absolutely.
The city has changed, and you know that.
Yes,
And because
yes.
you're part of the change, and a good part of the change.
Thank
and I
you.
think that's great. And my biggest hope, and I'm probably jumping ahead a little bit on
That's
you,
okay.
is that, in the next 4 years, if somebody asks me that question, I would hope that my answer becomes, here in the city of Pittston, we've set an example not only for our own people here in the city, but for people in the state and people nationally to look at. We've got a lot of struggles going on right now, and you see it. You see it here with your congregation. I see it down at St. John's, down the street. That's the thing that's the same, and we need to stop looking at how we're different and start figuring out how we're the same, because that's where we build and we're able to move forward. So a lot of the next 4 years for me is going to be the people part. We know we can do the bricks and sticks stuff,
Yeah.
but I want to change the fabric now of the community, and that involves people in the sense. You ask young people today, and you say something like, a block party, and most of them look at you like, what are you talking about?
They're not
Block
familiar.
party?
Not familiar.
That's even worse than saying a record. So, we need to work on that, and I think we need to bring that concept back to those small units, because those are the building blocks by which we're going to move forward.
Absolutely. One of the things that I found fascinating with what happened over the last couple of years with the Pittston area is that I saw before downtown came into effect, I saw the efforts that were being made in the communities. But when you're dealing with changing the community, well, it's so large, and everybody wants their section done.
Right.
And so you don't get to see how the money is properly distributed and how the things are developing. When we centered it around the main street, then it kind of gave them a kind of a personal, there is a proper appropriation of funds and things. And now revisiting the communities, I think that creates confidence, number one. I think it creates confidence in leadership. I was told, and you've heard me say this many times, when I came to Pittston, I was told I wouldn't be received, I wouldn't be embraced in this area, and it's been absolutely the opposite, that we've been immensely embraced and warmly received. But I think that's what people have to be ready to wrap their minds around, that when you're building and doing the type of things that I've seen you do, and I admire you tremendously, I really do. When you're building and doing, it sometimes is difficult for people to see the change, because it's got to be spread out. But then when we centralize it in an area like downtown Pittston, it doesn't mean that we don't care about anything else. It just simply means we need you to see that we have the city in mind, and the interest is growing there. Was that your passion when you guys made the downtown kind of the central area theme for redevelopment?
Well, it's two reasons. I think that's one of them. It's no different than putting a welcome mat on your front door, your front doorstep, and that's what I think our downtown is. It's the welcome mat. It's really your first glimpse at the city of Pittston, as you then move into the neighborhoods. But the other piece is when you look at downtown and you look at value, that the highest and best use in terms of where you can build up and where you can build a tax base happens in
Yes.
downtown. And we're cognizant of that. I mean, we still have a predominantly older community. There's a little bit of a shift going now, but even with younger people coming in, we need to be cognizant of taxes and where we go. And I'm proud to say that the Klush administration over the 9.5 past years has not increased real estate taxes in the city at all.
Awesome.
And I think that the fees that have changed have been commensurate with what inflation would be. I mean, look, milk is more than it was last year. Do I wish it was the same price? Yes, I wish it was less, but that's not an economic reality to think that that's possible. So I think we've done a good job managing those things, and I give the administration a ton of credit. Jason Klush was part of my team.
Yes.
20 years ago, he was a sophomore in college,
Wow.
and stayed part of my team, and I'm very proud to be part of his team, and I'm hoping that if things work out
Absolutely.
for me, he'll continue to be part of my team going on. And he's taken the same little break that I contemplated, and I have to say, I admire him to do that.
So do I.
It's a choice about family, and we may get a second shot at fixing Main Street, but you don't get a second shot at raising your children and being a parent. So I think that's an honorable decision. I think it's the right decision.
So do I.
And it's a hard decision, but it's an easy one too.
Right. Now, I'm going to backtrack because you said something kind of fast that I'm hoping that the viewers caught a hold of. 9 years under the Klush administration, taxes did not increase. That's incredible.
Yeah, it is incredible. It's not easy to do. We've been very fortunate to be able to secure grants. We've been able to, I think, wisely redistribute funds. We've been able to do more with less. It's not a shocking image to go downtown and see Jason working downtown.
Not at all.
Or other members of the administration. And we like doing that, but we also do it because we need to do it. You need to lead by example, and there's nothing that I wouldn't ask anybody to do that I wouldn't do myself.
And that you haven't done. By
No,
the
and then I
way.
haven't done. As a matter of fact, one of the hardest things I ever did, and it's why I admire the gentlemen that work up the street and do our sanitation and collect garbages. That's not easy work.
No.
So I was in office about a month. I wasn't too smart either, because I decided that I was going to do this in January. I picked a raining day that later turned into snow. It was freezing cold, and it was probably the hardest day of work I've ever done in my life.
Wow.
And at the end of that day, I had a different understanding, and I always had respect for hard work. My grandfather was an old school of immigrant descent carpenter, and he taught me a lot of lessons and values about hard work and respecting the people that roll up their sleeves and do the hard work every day. It's challenging to sit behind a desk, but it's very challenging both physically and mentally to go out in the dead of winter when it's pitch black and pick up garbage bags that I will tell you, not to gross you with details, but it's very disgusting when they break and spill all over you.
So you decided what term was that?
It was my first term. I was an infant in my first term.
So in your
not
first-
very smart. 2 or 3 weeks into it.
And you decided you were going to go and just put yourself in their position.
Yeah, and I wanted to really understand, all of the positions and understand, what it was that we were asking people to do. And I thought that if I had a better perspective, a real perspective of what the job entailed, then, down the road when we were talking about purchasing new equipment or the logistics of collecting garbage and recycling, I could better understand it. And I've always believed in, leadership that way. I remember seeing an image, the difference between, being a boss and being a leader. The boss stands up in the cart and is pulled by everyone around him or her. A leader is out there pulling and moving the cart to some specific goal. And I always tried to be that way. So, I think you need to be hands-on, and it's the real one big commonality between Jay and I,
Yes.
because we're a little bit different physically.
Yeah,
He's a
yeah,
little
yeah,
more
yeah.
muscular than I am.
Just a little.
So, just a little bit.
just a little.
I'm working on it. So,
The thing that I think is amazing is that today we have reality shows now that exemplify that behavior, where the bosses go in and they put themselves in that. And this is what, 2000 what?
17. That was 2000. That was 1998.
Right.
So we should have like jumped on that.
We
and
should-
marketed
we'd
that.
have marketed
We'd have
that.
no
We'd have been-
budget issue.
We'd be ahead of the
It'd be
game.
Perfect. Yeah. Actually, it's pretty funny because you're talking about undercover boss. And,
Right.
So I had this stocking cap on because it was cold, and the funniest part of the whole day was, our guys have a really good understanding of who's out there in the neighborhoods.
Yes.
And, they know that maybe at 200 William Street there might be a 92-year-old woman that, in that kind of weather can't get the garbage off the
Absolutely.
porch. And it is not unlike them, and I give them great credit, that they will go up on that porch and pick that garbage bag up on the day that it's not out there when they know it should be. So in that spirit, they told me that. So it wasn't not 200 William Street. I'll
Right.
protect the innocent and not give the address. But it was a street in the city. So I went up onto the porch, and just as I was doing that, an elderly female woman came out onto the porch. Now, I'm all geared up in my stocking cap. And the best part of it was she said, "Thank you, young man. I hope that happens the next time I do it, 20 years later." But she came out, and I was taking the garbage bag, and I talked to her for a couple seconds. And about 2 minutes into it, she realized who I was. So we had this very funny exchange back and forth, and it was really energizing.
Wow.
I got back on the back of the truck, and I even got to jump on the back of the truck and ride on the back of the truck, and without any OSHA violations, I can assure you.
So after 2005, that was your second term, right?
Correct, yeah.
And
that was
after
the end
that-
of my second term.
Right, the end of your second term, and then you joined the redevelopment.
I left, Mayor Keating took office, and I was shortly thereafter appointed to the Redevelopment Authority, and then subsequently the Housing Authority. So at this point, I sit on two authorities within the city.
Now,
redevelopment.
for our viewers, what does that really entail? Those either one or both of those?
So the
positions?
redevelopment authority really is the entity of the city that's charged with those revitalization tasks that you're talking about.
Wow.
Downtown, improvements in the neighborhoods. It really is sort of the team that deploys the strategy. The housing authority then deals with housing issues within the city. Creating housing opportunities for people that are less fortunate on a wide spectrum, from our youngest residents to some of our elderly residents. And we have various forms of public housing that exists throughout
Wow.
the city. So we made a strategic decision, and I thought it would be important that both of those entities were sort of rowing the boat in the same direction. So at this point, we have 3 overlapping board members of 4 that sit on both of those boards, and I think it's been really beneficial. We've been able to, create some synergies, some efficiencies in terms of, deployment of dollars. We're currently doing a couple projects together right now
Awesome.
that you'll
Awesome.
hopefully see in the next couple of years.
That's really amazing. So you got your master's in psychology
Yes.
and in counseling,
Yes.
and all of a sudden you're just rebuilding Piston.
Yes. Yeah. Now, I'll tell you, I'll share with you a funny story. A couple years ago, it seems like yesterday, my children were looking at college, and I was telling them that, you have to think about what you're doing.
Right.
You can't just go there and I'm going to go to college and not have any direction.
Right.
And one of the wiser of the two quipped, how's that degree you got working out for you? I work for an architectural engineering firm now, which is, I'm not quite sure, I have to draw on the napkin to figure out how I got to where I am. But it's all the same. It's all the same experiences, and I think the key and the core to any job, even the work you do, is really about understanding, what your mission is, and
Yes.
what you're trying to achieve, and setting goals. And I told somebody I had a really cool experience about 2 months ago. I got to speak to a bunch of graduating seniors at one of the local high schools, and I was talking to them about leadership and goal setting. And I told them that. So I played football in high school, and in the spring I was very terrible in baseball. There were girls that were much better than I was. As a matter of fact, one of them lives in the condos down there, and I tell her that all the time. I was actually afraid when she pitched to me. So I wanted to find something to do, so I decided I was going to run because I couldn't do anything else that well, and I wanted to do something in the spring. Well, I'm not very fast. So I decided my only choice was to be a distance runner.
Right,
And I really didn't think that out too much. It wasn't very smart. So the first day I thought, well, we're going to go out on this run, and there are all these guys and girls that were there, and I clumped the girls, and because more than half of them laid a beating on me that first day. We went out and we did this 5-mile run, and I never really realized how far 5 miles really is. And I thought I was almost there, and somebody said, no, we're only about a half mile out. So it was really an important lesson in life. I was not going to give up. I was going to finish this 5-mile run no matter what. So I literally was talking to myself the whole run, saying, okay, you just need to get to that next telephone pole. And if you could get there, maybe you can get to the next one. And that was really, when I thought about it later, it's really an important lesson in life, because that's what it's about. It's not really about getting to the end goal. It's really that journey, that in-between piece. So that for me was an important takeaway, and I've always approached things like that. There's nothing that you can't overcome if you break it down into those small pieces. And I learned that in psychology. You call that successive approximations. In Skinnerian psychology, it's how we train in animals to do tricks, and how we do all those things. So that's a really cool lesson, and I like that, and I like applying those theories of psychology and principle to what we do.
You like team building, don't you?
I think there's anything more important than team. I had a couple great coaches, but I had a guy named Bob Barberi who was a football coach at Pittston area, and one of the things he drilled into our heads over and over is there's no I in team.
Right.
And I've always remembered that, and you can get a lot more done. I don't care how good you are, and there's people that are great.
Right.
Tom Brady's a great quarterback, but without the other 10 people on the team,
exactly,
you don't get to see his skills. You could be great at what you do here in the confines of this building, but without your team making sure, just like getting ready today, if we didn't have other people here helping us set up,
we'd never
wouldn't
be able to
do
get this
this.
done.
So team is really important. It's a strange balance because I like to talk and I like people, so sometimes I tend to be out front in the team, but that in no way is in any way a slight or a disregard for my team. I would welcome any of them to be here, and I'm proud to have each of them sit next to me, not behind me, next to me or in front of me, because that's how we've really gotten here. So I believe in that team. The cool thing about this 20-year journey is that we've not lost any members of that team. We have, unfortunately, to natural circumstances. One of the guys I ran with passed away into my second term, but the team that's still here is the team that started, and that's not really easy to do.
No, that's
it's
not
really
easy to do.
easy to build a team, I think. You can build a great team if you're playing professional baseball and you have a ton of money. It's great. It's easy to get the best athletes there, but it's more than that. It's about keeping the team together, and not only keeping the team together, but making sure that the team operates and fires on the same cylinders, and that we all sort of share the same goal and vision and mission. So being a leader isn't me forcing my priorities down people's throats.
Absolutely not.
It's really about coalescing and saying what is it we want to do, because when you do that, then in the battle everyone will lock arms and get you forward.
Absolutely. One of the things that I admired most about you when I was just because I watched you from afar, there would be a number of different things going on in the city, and like you said, sometimes you are afforded the position to be in the front, but there's never been a time that I saw you in the front that you weren't constantly thinking about all the other team players and sharing not only the responsibility but the glories with them too. Like, okay, we've done this, and I'd like to thank this one, and I'd like to talk about that. It just spoke volumes for me. Coming here to Pittston, at one point I was like, what am I doing in Pittston? I never even heard of Piston. Um, After about a year, maybe a year and a half in, and I started getting introduced to you and administration here, I realized it was a great training ground for me to learn team building, to learn a whole mass of things that basically I thought I knew, but then watching Piston do it, it was like, wow. So part of that impact that you talk about wanting to make in terms of not just showing a cohesiveness in Pittston, but in the whole nation and in the world, I think you guys are well on your way in that direction, because here in Perspective, we've learned so many things just watching how you give credit and give responsibilities and just share the platform with everybody. I mean, I was called to the platform times when I wasn't even really involved in things. Oh, Rev, come up and do this, or come up. You're just very inclusive, and I think that's beyond commendable for someone that is as busy as you are, because you're really putting in some hours, you're putting in some work, and it's not just behind the desk work.
No, it's, and I believe that, that it's important work. So, we lose track of the hours, and sometimes they seem like minutes, sometimes they seem like days, sometimes they seem like months, unfortunately. But, again, when you have the team there, it just makes things really easy. And, victory is best and wins are best when you have people around you to celebrate those victories. So I hope that, we can really expand this team. And it's really great to have you guys here in the community. Our community has changed.
Yes, it has.
It's apparent that it's changed. And I think that's a great thing. And that's part of really where we are. And it really, there are some days and some nights that I'm really saddened by what I see. Because you sit back and you think, can't we just for 5 minutes just be people and figure this out? And if we can do that, we can have so much of a better respect for one another.
Yeah.
We can disagree, and we can even shout and scream at one another. I'm okay with that.
Right, yeah, me too.
But I think there's a level of respect that we, you can't cross the line of that level of respect. And look, sometimes we may both get angry and bang our fists down on something, probably more than we want to admit. But
Right.
We shouldn't depart on that. And I hope we can set those examples here. And we shouldn't be afraid. And I was talking to somebody a couple months ago, and you had mentioned about coming here. The only reason you fear turning the corner is because you don't know what's around it.
What's there?
But if you can think forward and be willing to not be afraid, of difference, and not look for difference. Again, go back to, looking for this. How are we the same? That's such a building block for moving forward. So, that's the mission. Let's
Yeah.
figure it out. And, I consider you a part of the team. I hope you know that.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, okay, so this would be your third term.
Correct.
If you had the opportunity, and you do, to say something to the audience right now, because we're going to air this for the area, be airing on Wednesday. What is it that we're here? Thank you. What is it right there in the camera there? What is it that you would like to, what's your ambition? What's your aspiration for what could happen next?
I think anything is possible, and I think that's what the message is. And I would like to think that after these next couple years, what we do here in the city of Pittston will be similar to fields and changes that you've seen from people like Steve Jobs, and you've seen at Tesla, where the limits and the boundaries of what we think are acceptable and are the norm are changed. So I really want to push the envelope and do some different things. And my hope then at the end is that we're not going to be talking about bricks and sticks. We will a little, but what we'll be talking about is a new fabric of a new community that comes out of the end of all this hard work. And we begin to understand what neighborhoods really mean, and what it is to have a block party, and what it is to be able to go out and help your neighbor. Because I think we need to get back to the basics. That's why they call it the good old days. So although we're moving forward, we're going to look back to the principles of the past. And the one mural that graces downtown, which we call the Heritage Mural, which talks about the coal and it depicts those scenes. When I was talking to Dwight Kirkland about that mural, we gave him a lot of latitudes, and I said one thing to him: I don't want to direct you in terms of where you go artistically, but I want you to contemplate one thing. And the one thing I said was, in order for us to see forward, we need to stand on the shoulders of the great people that have come here before us. So that's what we're going to do as we move forward. I'm confident of that. We have a great team. You're part of that team.
Thank you.
We're going to lock arms and we're going to push the city forward, and I think we're going to set an example that people look at as they try to figure out how to build their communities back.
Mike, I want to thank you so much for coming
Thank you very
out
much.
to be with us. Listen, guys, it's so important to get involved in the community and to know what's going on. The one thing I do love about the Piston area is that the doors are open, the open policy doors that they have. If you have questions about what's going on in the community, ask the officials. They're very approachable. They're amazing, amazing group of people. And what we've seen, as Mike has said so eloquently, it's not just the sticks, bricks, and mortars, okay? Hearts, lives, they matter, and they matter to the whole administration. I'm very honored to have Mike with us today, and thank you again. I know you're very busy, but thank you so much for coming out and being with us, and we'll see you next week. We're very excited about what we're doing here, and we're making you a part of it. God bless you.